Hello guys, Checkers here, and today the story that I'm going to be telling you guys is the first time that I tried the nose candy, if you will. Now, before I start this story, I want to go get some things out of the way, and the first thing is kind of my background and my viewpoint, or at least at the time, my viewpoint on cocaine. So when I started experimenting with drugs, I looked into various different substances, and I wanted to set a line in the sand, if you will, on exactly how far I was willing to take this. And when I did that research and looked into all these various chemicals, I determined that in terms of hard drugs, if you will, cocaine was as far as I was willing to take this. Obviously, there are harder drugs like meth and heroin that obviously are very addictive and destructive to your body. And at least, when I say destructive, I at least mean when done frequently. And then there is crack. I do realize crack and cocaine are the same thing, but just something about crack and its stigma and needing to smoke a chemical in an odd pipe or a Pyrex tube, at least in relation to snorting it, that is not really something I was into. And for the most part, even to this day, I have actually held quite true to these principles that I initially set up. Obviously, there were some little discrepancies and some little, I don't really want to say exceptions because they're out of my control, but at least willingly I have stuck true to that, where cocaine is the drug that I was willing to try, at least the hardest drug that I was willing to try. And hopefully if this channel does take off more, then I'll be able to tell you more stories on what exactly those exceptions were. But let's get back to the topic at hand, which is the first time that I ever tried the cocaine. So to set up this story, it was my senior year of high school, and I had just turned 18, and it was Christmas break. So how Christmas break went is me and my family, we would always travel out of state to go see my grandma like a lot of families would do. And my grandma was about 10 hours away. And to be quite honest, her house was absolutely miserable. At the time, she still had dial-up internet, so there wasn't any Wi-Fi. Then on top of that, she was a little sparse in terms of entertainment options. You could probably look at her shelf and find like some 80s action movies that my grandpa would watch. But other than that, it was pretty boring out there. She was out in the country. Then on top of that, even if you did manage to go into town, it was a little town. Like, I believe their big highlight is they actually had a movie theater, and it was just a one-screen theater. So long story short, this was not a fun place to be. However, because it was my senior year of high school, I had a job at the time, and it was just a shitty restaurant job, right? But I told my dad, I'm like, hey, I have this job. I can't take off weeks and weeks and weeks, even though it wouldn't have been that long. It would have been like a week. But hey, I can only request off so many days from work. I can't go out there for a long time. So my dad was like, okay, here's what we'll do. Well, you can drive over with the family in the snow, and it will be terrible. But then what will happen is we'll get to Grandma's house, we'll do Christmas Eve, we'll do Christmas Day. Then what can happen is on the 26th, you can fly back ahead of our family. Then you can get back, then you can work, then, we'll drive back and we'll go meet up with you later, back at home. Then I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. However, in my head I was like, no, that sounds really great because this gives me an opportunity to go have a kickback with the boys. Now obviously I was still in high school, so I was stupid, but I wasn't stupid enough to think that having a party was a good idea. I knew what happened at parties. I knew shit broke, it got stolen, shit got vandalized, and having a party was not a good idea. But, having a kickback, that'd be a good time. And it was Christmas break, so, we weren't in school and we didn't really have a big social circle that we could all bring together. And then on top of that, a lot of people were still out of town with their families. But, I just figured I'd have a kickback with some of my friends. So what I did is I set up a nice little smoking spot for us to smoke some weed in the garage. I set up the N64 upstairs on the big screen TV with Super Smash Bros. Loaded up in it. Then, in my living room, I set up a hookah spot for us, because I had a hookah that a friend recently gave to me because he was afraid of his parents finding it. So what I did is, I do realize that hookah has coals, and coals have heat, and heat causes things to burn. So what I did is I set up an old blanket that I didn't really care about on top of our coffee table in the living room. Then I set the hookah on top of that. Then I figured, hey, if it gets knocked over and a coal takes a tumble, then the coal will hit the blanket and will burn the blanket. I won't really care about that. But the coffee table itself will not be burnt. Then my mom obviously won't realize that we were smoking hookah or that anything happened, and we'd all be good, right? So I had my hookah spot set up, and we were good to go there. So now that I have my venue all set up, I started inviting people over, right? So and I invited two friends over. I'm not really going to give them names because they don't play a crucial role in this party, but neither of them had booze or weed or anything on them, so I invited them over and we're just hanging out, right? Then we have a third friend coming over. We'll call this friend Ezekiel. And Ezekiel said, "Oh yeah, I'm meeting up with my dealer before this, so, I'll grab some weed, I'll come over, we can get baked, we can start chilling, it'll be a great time, right?" So me and the two other friends were just waiting for Ezekiel to show up. Then Ezekiel shows up. He's like, "Hey man, I got stuff, we're good to go." Then I'm like, "Oh hell yeah, let's do this." So we go over to the garage where I have my smoke spot set up, right? So all four of us, we go there, we sit down, then we're like, "All right, bring out the stuff, man," right? So what he does is he reaches in his pocket, then pulls out a white bag of powder, right? And we weren't expecting that. We were expecting weed, right? Then we're like, so this isn't weed. What is this? And he's like, "Candy." Then we both kind of all of us look confused, and we're like, "Candy? What do you mean?" He's like, "Cocaine." Then my two other friends looked at each other. Then they both just said, "I'm out," and they both left the garage, right? Then me, obviously, as I explained at the start of this video, I was willing to try cocaine. I determined that was the line in the sand that I was going to draw, but cocaine was behind that line. So I was like, alright, well, hell yeah, let's do this. So anyway, we snorted it. I'm sure you have seen in movies or from personal experience, you know how that goes, so I'm not going to explain it to you too much. But in terms of effects afterwards, I had done MDMA before this, and I don't know, like, cocaine just compared to MDMA, it just seemed like, obviously it was more speedy and more of a stimulant, but just not as impressive, and I kind of, like, I'd heard about cocaine and seen movies, and I just expected more from it. I mean, it was fun, don't get me wrong, but compared to MDMA, it just seemed like more energetic, less euphoric, and I just was overall not as impressed with it. But nonetheless, it was still fun. So after we did that, we were hanging out, then shortly after, a bigger group and a group with the rest of my friends showed up. And one of the friends in this group was Jay. And the thing about Jay is this kid was just, to put it frankly, a total idiot. He was one of those kids that had gotten to drug use and at a really early age. I don't want to say that's what messed him up, but he just wasn't a smart kid in general. So Jay shows up, and then we all get in a group, then we go to the living room, then we light up the hookah, right? So obviously, I take the tongs, I light up the coal, then I put it on top of the foil on the hookah, and we start smoking the hookah, and, it's just a great time. We do have a group of about 10 people going now, so, it's still a kickback, and it stayed a kickback. It wasn't a party by any means. But, we're all just hanging out and smoking hookah and having a good time, and I'm all coked up, obviously, and, we're just chilling. So while we're smoking hookah, someone passes the hose to Jay, right? And then, I don't remember how exactly it happened, if someone was fucking with him, or if he was talking with his hands, or if he was just being stupid in general. But one way or another, Jay pulls the hose of the hookah, and obviously the pipe tumbles over, and then the coal on top of it goes with it. And the coal totally missed the table, which I had the blanket on. And to be quite honest, the table, or the blanket being on the table, might have contributed to the hookah being unstable, so it might not have been entirely Jay's fault here. But anyway, Cole goes tumbling over, completely misses the table, and lands on the floor. And what was on the floor below this table, luckily it wasn't hardwood tile or anything. Luckily it wasn't hardwood floor or anything. If it was tile, it probably would have been fine. But it landed on top of my mother's rug, right? So I was like, oh shit, right? So I grab the tongs, I immediately pick up the coal, then I set the hookah upright and put it back on top of the hookah. And then I put the tongs back on the table, but then I look down, and this rug is just burnt. So we didn't have those square hookah coals, we had those cheaper instant light circular ones, right? So there was almost a perfect circle burnt into the carpet, but it was just black, it was tarry, it was messed up. If I left it the way it was, my mother would totally notice, I'd have a lot of explaining to do, and it just was not a good situation. So now I'm all coked up and I'm freaking out because Jay had just knocked over a hookah and burnt a hole in my mom's rug. And it wasn't necessarily just the rug that I was freaking out about, it's that my parents were very against smoking in general. My grandma on my dad's side actually died of lung cancer, so any sort of smoking or any sort of nicotine they were generally against. And on top of that, I had just broke my mother's beautiful rug, and on top of that, I had just tried cocaine, so I'm all amped up, so my anxiety was just heightened. So what I did is I had actually gotten a new pair of scissors in my stocking, in my Christmas stocking that year. So what I did is I got a paper towel, got it wet, then I got the black tar mark on top of the rug as wet as I could. Then I got those scissors, right, and I just kind of started stabbing at the tar mark. Then I started breaking it up and, making it so that it was in smaller portions than just one black big burn mark. Then what I actually was able to do was the rug, it wasn't a thick rug, but, it had a little bit of depth to it. So what I actually was able to do after I broke it up is I was actually able to stick the scissors under it and cut off just the top layer that was burnt, and under it, obviously, the carpet was fine. So what I did slowly is I just kind of started cutting away at the carpet. Then after, I don't know, probably a half an hour in duration, to be quite honest, probably about as long as cocaine lasts, I was able to actually go cut off just the top part of the carpet that was burnt. Then what was just left then was there was a little divot in the carpet. You couldn't really tell though because it was the same color as the rest of it. And there was just a little divot where I had cut out from it, but if you were just looking at it, you couldn't really tell. The only way you really could tell, like, you could walk over and probably not tell. The only way you could tell is if you actually put your hand up to it and felt it, you could feel the divot. But I actually did quite a good job of cutting away at just the burnt part of the carpet and leaving just the fresh stuff underneath exposed. Then after I fixed my mother's rug, we just chilled and smoked weed for the rest of the night. One of the friends that came with Jay did have some weed, so we did have weed now, and we just smoked and chilled, and it was, pretty good kickback night with the boys. And then, obviously, the next day I cleaned everything up and got rid of all evidence of anything that had happened that night. Then my parents did come back a few days later, and they never found out. We just played it off like nothing happened. And I'm not lying, to this day, my mother still has this rug. It is not in her living room anymore because her living room in the house she lives in now is actually carpet, but she still does have this rug off to the side in the little, I wouldn't really call it a dining room area. It's kind of like a loft area off to the side that they don't use. But to this day, you can still go to that carpet and look where that burn mark was and feel that divot. However, they never found out. No one ever told her. She has not noticed, and it's been, gosh, like almost 10 years now, and she still has not figured anything out. And that concludes my stories guide. It's a story of both black and white, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did enjoy it, please give this a like so that I know that you guys like this and you guys are recognizing it and at least giving some entertainment to someone. And if you guys give me that feedback, I'll just keep on making them. I hope you guys enjoyed this story, and you guys have a great day.